I recently had an opportunity to speak to Abby Kay. Did you grow up around a lot of music?
Yes, actually, I grew up in Kentucky, so I actually had a pretty strong influence of I wouldn't say country music per se, but more blues and just early, rock from the '60s, just because that was what my parents listened to. They loved jazz and they loved blues. So I was dragged along all the time to go see music. And they encouraged us to play an instrument. So I have a brother, and we played piano for most of my childhood. I played the piano, which unfortunately I stopped playing because it didn't grab me as an instrument so much when I was younger. And but ultimately, I was also or coincidentally, I was really more of a performer. I was really interested in theater and dance and voice. So most of my life, I would say I was heavily active in music, but more through that channel.
Who were some of your biggest influences?
Crystal Gale and Linda Ronstadt, and those were probably some of the big female artists that I listened to quite a bit.
Were any of your family members musicians themselves?
Mother was, or she is very musical. I grew up watching her play the piano as well, and she could sing. My brother is a pianist. He became a really, really good pianist. And there was just a lot of music in my house growing up.
Did performing theater help you later on with your stage presence?
There's definitely, I'll say it's a very different experience. I can't really say it's the same fruit, theater versus playing live music. Basically because the skills you develop in theater on stage are primarily of a different character. So you spend a significant amount of time when you're in theater studying a character that's not about you. And I find the hardest differentiation, or the hardest thing, the transition to get used to, was that it was just such a vulnerable music, and playing music, whether it's your own music or somebody else's, is very vulnerable. And you can't really hide behind another character. It's just you and your instrument, whatever that instrument is. So yes, I would say ultimately, being on stage, certainly I'm not shy of being on stage, but it is it's a very different experience.
When writing songs, where do you get your inspiration from?
I wouldn't say it's it's an open book. It's not literal. But some of my music doesn't pertain to me at all. Some of it is more from observations. I have a song on my website, actually, that I played live called My Perfect Situation. And that's an example of me just observing the world around me and kind of the experience I brought it to in that song. So I'd say it's a mix.
How has social media made it easier for you to promote your music?
I think it's incredible. I try to be as active as I can. And I would say just about a year ago, I really wasn't very active other than on a personal level, in a personal, closed-in network. And a friend of mine who was really, really successful in social media, she kind of taught me a little bit and gave me some ins and outs. And I find it to be a really important tool, and probably critical as a newer artist, or even if you've been an artist for a very long time, just getting yourself exposed and making it very easy for anybody in the world to access and learn about you and hear you. And it works. I mean, I would like it to work even better. It's a constant work in progress. But I'm in, people from India follow me. So I find it fascinating, and I find it to be a very important tool, and you know, hopefully artists just realize that it just takes time to sit down and be consistent and work on it a little bit every day, and it really goes a long way.
Was it tough deciding to move from Chicago to Seattle?
Well, a couple of reasons. I think one, their job opportunities brought my family out here initially, but the ultimate leap was probably left in my shoes because I had a different career back in the Midwest, and I lived there a very long time. I came from Chicago. So ultimately it was, you know, am I ready to start my life over? And if I am going to, I couldn't just transfer my career that easily. So it was one of those decisions and points in my life where I really wanted to, and I was ready to focus on my craft and my music and my writing, kind of cold turkey, you know, you get up and you move and you start over, and you don't really have any excuses. So I was ready for that. And I don't think I could have picked a better city for music. Seattle's is just a very supportive environment to play music in. And it is all over. It is all over. And people take it pretty seriously.
Tell us something you enjoy outside of music. What do you like to do when you're not performing?
I'm a dancer. Still to this day, I swing dance, which is, you know, not really rockabilly, but I also rockabilly, big band type of music, swinging and turning and all that goodness.
Are you currently working on new music?
On my second album, actually. We're at the beginning stages of it. All the music's been written, but in terms of production and musical arrangement and deciding the kind of record that I want. My first album was fully produced and pretty polished, you know, had a lot of different instrumentation to it. So just deciding the direction I want to take the second album in.
Does the recording process get any easier with each album?
Yeah, you'll have to ask me this again in a year after it's over, but I would say it's probably a two-part answer. It's easier in the sense that you know what you're doing better. I know the challenges I came up against in my first album that I didn't enjoy. So now I know how to improve those and change ways of getting things done in a different fashion. I would say that's the good side, the easier side. I feel like the harder part is getting and mustering the emotional energy to do it again. It's a massive endeavor, and anybody who hasn't made an album, including myself, you know, a year and a half ago, never really understood. I never understood the elements to making a record. So I would say that's just probably the hardest part for me, is just to kind of, you know, after a year of not kind of diving in and starting it again.
For an artist that's recording their first album, is there any advice you would give them?
I would say the number one advice I have is to start with a plan and have all your music ready. Have, whether it's an EP, you know, whether it's a 4-song EP or a full-length album, 9 songs, 10, 11, whatever. I would suggest having the plan together and actually having most of the songs arranged before you go in and record. So instead of doing it song by song and period of time by period of time, if possible, you know, it's not always possible to go in and record an album all at the same time, but as close to the same time and same period of time as possible is my recommendation.
What are your long-term goals as far as your music?
In addition to performing live as much as possible, because I enjoy that, I enjoy singing with other people. I enjoy writing. I personally, I feel my goals are more placement, placing my songs in backgrounds of television, of film, even having, if there's any interest in other artists singing my music, I'm open to that. So probably more on that angle, longer term professionally speaking, but always performing my music and always writing.
Tell me about your latest album.
You can definitely find my CD on abbykmusic.com or itunes.com. My record is, I'm under Abby K, and my album is called Bare Your Soul. It's of a daisy, and you can download it digitally, or you can purchase the actual CD from CD Baby, which is all, again, can be done directly from my website.
If you enjoyed this video, please support us on Patreon.
I get asked all the time, why do I do what I do as far as helping musicians? And being someone